a little annoyed at church today because it's a majority black church, and the pastors were so careful to not piss off their majority black congregation because they know most people are Democrats and they agree with the Democrat philosophy of sacrificing your children. And it just goes to show they kept talking about how we should be focusing on helping the homeless and we should be focusing on, helping adopt some children and not judge other people. And, if you believe the word, you do, but you shouldn't be ordering anybody around, and that God doesn't force us to do anything, so we shouldn't force others to do anything either. It's sad. It's like we can't take a stand. You can't stand on the word of God that says you should not sacrifice your children. You can't make that stand in your congregation because you're afraid to piss off your Democrat congregation. Pastors, do the right thing. Stand up for the life of babies and stop being a wussy.
Remember when you were a kid and you was about to get a whooping, how your mom or your dad told you better not grab this belt? Or when they told you to strip and you was getting a whooping butt naked and they told you better not grab these covers? If you grab them covers, you will make that beat down longer, right? Well, to me, it appears that God has pulled the covers off a lot of these pastors' secret sins. And because of it, they don't want to touch this whole issue about abortion. See, I believe one of the reasons why, and I hate to even say this, and it's unfortunate that we have to associate fornication and adultery with Christian leaders, but unfortunately it's true, right? But a lot of these pastors aren't going to be able to stand. They're not going to be able to say nothing. They won't take a stand. For one, they have never taken a stand against anything right, for one. Two, the ones who did take a stand on things that were right or wrong, guess what? They can no longer use abortion as a fig leaf or a scapegoat to hide behind their secret sins. A lot of these pastors have been going around the scenes for many years, sleeping with silly women in the church. Silly women are emotionally bruised women. And because of that, they used abortion when these women get pregnant to have them abort the baby so they can keep a clean slate, keep their reputation, and stay in position. And so with this whole overturn with Roe versus Wade, a lot of them won't stand up in the black church. I mean, think about what you just said. Think about what she just said. You're in a congregation with a majority Democratic believers. How oxymoronic is that to start with? So if you expect them to take a stance now, then you're sadly mistaken. The reality is, be happy that God has pulled the cover off to show you who your leaders are. So now you have to make a sound decision whether you want to stay or believe God and trust him for leaders that will love him in his way and lead you to the truth. Now, although my views are conservative from the standpoint that I keep a biblical worldview, I don't claim to be a Republican or a Democrat. So I just want to put that out there. But I will say, when you're dealing with social political issues, it is a slippery slope. I'd be one to go on record and say this, that even in the Old Testament, when you see God command Israel, his covenant chosen people, that he delivered out of Egypt, and he tells them in Leviticus 18 how he pulls them out of Egypt, and he says, I don't want you to practice the customs of the Egyptians or the neighboring nations. And one of the practices they had was that they would sacrifice their children to Moloch. And they did it for convenience. They did it for prosperity. The same reasons why people want to abort their children today. So here it is. God is warning his covenant people not to practice these things that these other neighboring nations were already practicing. So you have to notice that these nations already practice these things. They practiced abortion, right? But he didn't want that to go on with the nation of Israel, right? So today, though I don't believe in a replacement theology. I don't believe we replaced Israel, but we have been adopted. And now that we are joint heirs with them, we are now covenant people as his church. So today, God doesn't want his church to practice these customs. And we should take a stand in the church against abortion when it comes to Christians who are fornicating and committing adultery and then using abortion to hide their sins. And see, the point I was trying to make is this is why these Christian leaders won't stand up, because they're doing it themselves. So they can't stand. They don't have a leg to stand on. And so, again, I believe because of this Roe versus Wade being overturned in our nation, that it's literally pulled the covers off a lot of these pastors. You get to really see them in more detail for who they really are. Because the bottom line is, They have been who they are from the beginning, and there have been a plethora of people online and anywhere else warning you against them, and you wouldn't listen. So just be thankful that God has had mercy on all of us and has waken us up to the real truth. And now it's just a matter of us making a decision to say, I want to continue to follow God in this truth. I don't stand with abortion. I'm glad that this has been overturned in our nation. But at the same time, it does get a little slippery. It does get a little sticky, because once you take a hard stand on one thing, it comes a slippery slope that's going to call you a hypocrite. And so I'm very careful with that. But to point it out again, when it comes to the church, no Christian should be standing for abortion or getting abortions. Preachers need to stand against adultery, fornication, just sexual immorality, homosexuality, lesbian, all these things, and doing in love, and show God's true intent for his creation. For us to stand with abortion is us taking God's place to say who should live and who should live and who shouldn't, and none of us have that authority to decide that. And if you decide to abort the child out of convenience or for your own prosperity, or because you don't want your life to be hindered, or because you just don't want it, then that makes you a murderer.